this is an interesting thing because we have talked before about Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He is an evangelical Christian. Like, he fits a youth pastor's definition of what an evangelical Christian ought to be. Like, this is a dyed-in-the-wool believer. And he also happens to be 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. And some of the things we have talked about when it comes to Mike Johnson is he's promoted a lot of conservative Christian craziness over the past several years since he's been in elected office. But things we have found out over the past couple of months since he took the role of speaker, since he got elected speaker, is he talked about having a covenant marriage, which makes it harder to get divorced. And he wants to make that a law because his marriage is stronger than all of your marriages. That's a Christian weird thing he did. He also talked about the Christian spyware. What was that called? The Christian software he uses, Covenant Eyes, to spy on his teenage son's internet history, and his teenage son gets to spy on his internet browser history so they can monitor each other's adult intake if and when it exists. Like, that was creepy and weird. Also a thing he did because he's evangelical. Recently, we talked about the fact that some German website discovered that he attended a purity ball promoting abstinence for his daughter because he's concerned with everyone's sex lives under the age of 18. He attended a purity ball years ago. So all of this is weird. But again, I wouldn't really care about any of this unless it translated to what he's going to do as speaker and what he's going to do as a lawmaker. And an interesting thing that happened this week is that the Congressional Freethought Caucus released a paper. I'm showing you the top of it right here. Speaker Johnson, Christian Nationalism in the Speaker's office. The Congressional Freethought Caucus put out a lengthy paper basically saying, I should probably tell you what the Congressional Freethought Caucus is. This was started a few years ago. There are 20 Democrats who sit on the Congressional Freethought Caucus right now, 20 of them. It was started by Jared Huffman, who is a congressman from California. I will also show you this. Here's the Freethought Caucus. It's started by Jamie Raskin as well from Maryland. He's like the conscience of the House right now. You've seen him on TV. But these are the members of the Freethought Caucus. The last one to join right now is Max Frost, the youngest member of Congress from Florida. They're all Democrats. Jared Huffman is openly humanist. And that's it when it comes to the non-theist part of the Freethought Caucus. All 19 other people are listed as some religion or another, or they just don't talk about it. It doesn't matter. That's fine. But basically, the Congressional Freethought Caucus, it exists to support atheists in general. They fight for church-state separation. They oppose discrimination against non-religious people, which is a real thing in other countries. They champion freedom of thought around the world. So those are all wonderful things that this caucus supports. It was launched by Jared Huffman and Jamie Raskin, has 20 members, fantastic group. So they put out this paper. They said, we wanted to ask a lot of questions about our concerns about Mike Johnson. We wanted to ask him directly, but for some reason, Mike Johnson would not sit with us to discuss any of this. So we're putting out this paper to document all the stuff we're really concerned about, as well as ask a bunch of questions that we would like to ask him if we had a chance to, if he would be willing to talk to us. And they make clear in this paper, I'm going to quote here, we respect, celebrate, and treasure his right and the right of every American to freely practice his faith. They don't care that he's an evangelical Christian. They care about public policy. So let me break down for you the big parts of this paper they put out, because this is interesting to look through. And I'm not going to read you all of this because it is long, but it starts by breaking down part 1, church-state separation. And when it comes to church-state separation, they point out one of the things Mike Johnson has fought for, I'm going to undo this because it's a lot of text. You can't read all that. One of the things Mike Johnson has fought for is to repeal the Johnson Amendment, which is basically the IRS rule that says if you're a nonprofit, and that includes churches, you're not allowed to endorse political candidates from the pulpit. The ACLU, Planned Parenthood, cannot tell members how to vote. If you do that, you are violating IRS guidelines. Well, Republicans have been trying to get rid of that rule forever because they want churches to be wings of the Republican Party. Mike Johnson has fought for that. He wants that to happen because he wants pastors to promote candidates from the pulpit. He sponsored a bill to do that. So that's disturbing. He rejects church-state separation. He has said it's so-called church-state separation. He said it's the opposite of how we were founded as a country. He doesn't believe the Establishment Clause should be used to prevent religion in the public square, like putting the 10 Commandments in public schools. He has also called for a biblically sanctioned government and believes we are a, quote, Christian nation. Mike Johnson has lied about Thomas Jefferson's support for separation of church and state, saying, quote, the founders wanted to protect the church from an encroaching state, not the other way around. And at the end of this bit, at the end of this part of the document, the Freethought Caucus asks a few questions here. You could see them with the bullet points here. Does he acknowledge and accept the constitutional separation of church and state? What does his oft-stated goal of creating a biblically sanctioned government actually mean? Does he believe, as many Christian nationalists argue, that the Bible, not the Constitution, must function as the supreme law of the United States and that the Bible must prevail in the event of a conflict between the Bible and civil laws? Those should be fairly easy questions for any lawmaker with power to answer. Mike Johnson doesn't seem to want to answer them. So I think those are worth bringing up. Those are good questions to ask. Another part of this document, by the way, I'm not going over every question because there are a lot of questions here, but you can see there's a couple more here. But number 2, using public education and public resources to promote evangelical Christianity. And in there, he says the paper says Mike Johnson has pushed public schools to adopt a course, like an elective course, to teach the Bible as accurate history. And critics have said, no, we saw the curriculum. It is very one-sided conservative evangelical propaganda. So what's up with that? Mike Johnson has defended religious proselytizing in public schools. He wants coaches to lead prayers. He thinks that should be allowed at public schools. He thinks faculty members should be able to participate in those prayers. He also has pushed to have Christian symbols in courthouses. He was an attorney for creationist Ken Ham when they wanted to use taxpayer funds to build Ark Encounter in Kentucky. So among the questions the Congressional Freethought Caucus has on this stuff, will he continue attempting to promote or mandate sectarian religious teachings, materials, or practices in our public schools? Will he continue advocating for the display of sectarian iconography in public places? Does that include the U.S. Capitol? Will he work to direct subsidies or other public resources to religious enterprises, such as the Noah's Ark theme park or the Museum of the Bible? Great questions. We don't have answers to them. Part 3 here goes after civil rights and liberties in the name of religion, because Mike Johnson has famously gone after LGBTQ people. If you haven't seen this, I talked about this in an earlier segment where I talked specifically about Mike Johnson, but these are articles he wrote years ago. Here you go. In his local newspaper. This is the marriage amendment, saying that in Louisiana, where he was serving, I think he was serving. I don't remember if he was a lawmaker at this time or he was just supporting it, but basically supporting the Defense of Marriage Amendment. So that's disturbing. Ignore that thing down the middle. This is another one. He said sexual orientation move should be opposed because a city in Louisiana had a non-discrimination policy that was going to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And he was saying, what? We can't allow non-discrimination rules to include them. That would be horrible. And in that paper, in that article that he wrote, among the many things he said legalizing same-sex marriage would lead to legalizing pedophilia and bestiality. It would culminate in the downfall of the entire democratic system. He also refers to homosexuality as, quote, not only a sin, but as an inherently unnatural, bizarre, dangerous lifestyle. He says that. I'm just going to run through some of this other stuff. When he was an attorney with the right-wing Alliance Defending Freedom group, he wanted to criminalize sex between two men or two women consenting. As a Louisiana lawmaker, he opposed marriage equality, tried to block same-sex adoption and marital benefits. He promoted conversion therapy or torture. He pushed to legalize discrimination against LGBTQ people. In Congress, he sponsored a Florida-style Don't Say Gay law. He wants to criminalize gender-affirming care. He opposes trans students playing sports. He voted against the Equality Act, the Respect for Marriage Act. I've already talked about his weird stance on divorce, that he thinks it's too easy for people to get divorced, so let's force people to stay in bad marriages, which is a horrible idea. Of course, he wants to get rid of access to contraception because evangelicals don't like that. He wants to ban abortion clinics. He called abortion a holocaust. He's actually said this. He wants to return to 18th century values because everything was great in the 1700s. He's backed Donald Trump's Muslim ban. He wants to imprison doctors who provide abortion care. And so after discussing all of that, look at these questions from the Congressional Freethought Caucus here. Here we go. As Speaker of the House, will he continue to press an extreme agenda of banning or criminalizing abortion and contraception across the country? Does he think states have the power to ban interracial marriage? Does he support religion-based immigration tests? Does he agree with the Great Replacement theory? I mean, again, all of these are good, important questions. That's it for that list. He should answer that. One of the things that actually heartened me this week is there was a reporter. I don't have this. I'm just saying this off the top of my head here. There was a reporter this week that asked Mike Johnson if he believed Joe Biden was put into the White House, if God wants Joe Biden to be president, because Mike Johnson has said God made him speaker. God put him to be speaker in this place and time for a reason. So they basically said, well, do you think Joe Biden was placed by God to be the president? And Mike Johnson admitted, after rambling for a while, yeah, I believe God wanted that to happen. But, he added, I think voters should change that, which is a weird contradictory thing for him to say. But I appreciated that a reporter actually called him out on his Christian hypocrisy there, because so many times people think, oh, you can't ask anyone about their religious beliefs. It's like how badly I want sports reporters to go up to an athlete after a game and be like, why did you win the game? Because God was on my side. Oh, do you think God was against the other team? Like, I want them to ask that question and they never do. Well, these are good questions that Mike Johnson ought to answer. And the last part of the Congressional Freethought Caucus's paper here, they said that Mike Johnson wanted to undermine democracy, and there was an extreme Christian nationalist agenda. They pointed out that he has promoted something called the Seven Mountains Mandate, which is a thing. If you don't know what it is, it's scary and you should look it up. But the Seven Mountains Mandate calls for Christians to take over every major realm of society: education, media, government, etc. 7 of them. And Mike Johnson has promoted this, which is, what does that mean, right? He has also said David Barton, the Christian pseudo-historian who just makes up lies about American history and then sells it to evangelicals who aren't smart enough to question what he says. What's up with promoting him? He said David Barton, Mike Johnson said, has a profound influence on me and my work and my life and everything I do. Mike Johnson also worked closely with the groups that promoted Project 2025, which is the Christian nationalist playbook for the next Republican president. And it's frightening and it is detailed. So, like, what's up with that? And he also said, and I think I talked about this in an earlier segment weeks ago, he went to a Christian conference and said, God wanted me to be Moses, whose job is to lead people to the promised land. So for that end, some of the questions the Congressional Freethought Caucus had were, again, pretty straightforward here. Did Joe Biden win the 2020 election? Do you support the Seven Mountains Mandate? Do you support the Project 2025 agenda? Are there any parts you would denounce or disavow, like the part about eliminating checks and balances on executive power? Again, great questions that ought to be answered. And this entire thing concludes with a very short thing. I think you could see it at the right here at the top of the screen. To this day, Mike Johnson remains deeply entwined with Christian nationalists that seek to transform our secular democracy into an authoritarian theocracy. And that is the right point. So none of this is an attack on Mike Johnson's faith. It raises, though, very good questions about how he plans to legislate his faith in a way that would affect all of us. And I think he owes it to the country to answer these questions. And if he's not going to do it because they're asking, if his own colleagues are asking and he doesn't care, then the media needs to ask him these questions because he loves the camera. He's there all the time doing live shots with the reporters. They should ask him this stuff because these are good questions. So I appreciate the CFC putting this out. I hope people catch on to it and take it seriously.